Welcome to Founder Stories, the show about entrepreneurs, innovators, and their success journeys. I'm your host, Teja Kalola. On this week's episode, we talk to the founder and CEO of the company Airshaper, Wouter Remmerie. Airshaper is a cloud-based CFD platform helping engineers and product designers get fast and accurate CFD results with not requiring much background in aerodynamics. However, when Wouter wanted to start a company, he wanted to build cars, and his invention was referenced by Ferrari in their patent. But when things didn't work out for him, he pivoted and started this company, Airshaper. Let's dive into his story.
Hi, Wouter. How are you?
Fine, thanks, Thea. And you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for coming to the show. I'm really glad you agreed to do this.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Are you really busy now?
Well, yeah, it's the start of the new year, and it's extra busy because of the whole Corona situation, obviously. But apart from that, it's a typical part of the year where companies are starting up again,
Right.
putting their budgets together, trying to define projects. So interesting times.
So before we dive into the show, tell us a little bit about your company, Airshaper.
Well, it's an online platform that has been designed and built so that people without necessarily too much experience in software and simulation can actually upload their 3D model, set a few basic things like the wind speed and the orientation of the 3D model, and just launch a simulation. And then all the rest is automated in the cloud. We will automatically build a simulation box around it, so to speak. We will set all the right parameters, do all the meshing, which is the 3D resolution of the calculation, all the way up until and including the final report that is then sent automatically to the users, so they can analyze the efficiency of a design, the downforce on a race car, the lift on a drone, and so on.
So that's really interesting, because when you think about CFD or airflow in general, it's a very complex phenomenon, and you would want your user to have some kind of experience, and automating this process is quite intriguing.
Yeah. I guess there's a lot of different user types, let's say, for simulations. There's people who do it day in, day out, and they have the super high-end software. They have literally hundreds of options to play with to get the simulation really right. And on the other end of the spectrum, there's people that are working on a product that is related to aerodynamics, but they don't have the capacity or the knowledge or the background or the funds to actually get into the aerodynamics. Like designing a bicycle helmet. Imagine you're doing that. Well, it's very likely you haven't done aerodynamic analysis yet, but you want to get into it. And then it's really nice to have a platform that is automated. You can just jump into it, and you can just pay per simulation. That's also one of the differences. You can just pay for every simulation that you need, and that's it.
Yeah, that's as opposed to owning the software by yourself.
Exactly.
It's a good way to outsource it, right?
Yes,
especially
indeed,
if you're a small company or you have an idea to test out. That's really good.
Exactly that. Yeah, that's right.
So what prompted you to go into the field of aerodynamics?
Well, good question. Actually, I studied engineering, mechanical engineering, and I worked for 5 years in a business that built and designed and built gearboxes for wind turbines, like very large wind turbines. But I wasn't involved in aerodynamics. It was casting design and so on, gear calculations. And then in my free time, I decided to design a sports car. Because like many boys and girls in the world, I dreamt of sports cars, but I wanted to do something special in the sense that I wanted to use the air that comes in at the front of the car to spit it out in an asymmetric way, left or right, to generate lateral forces on the car. Because air is already used to make cars go faster. In Formula One, for example, they have huge amounts of downforce pushing the car down. And via the extra downforce, you create more friction on the tires, which allows you to go faster through the corner. But there's a few downsides to that, because you have higher loads on your components, like on the wing, on the chassis, on the structure. The entire force or load path between the wing and the contact patch of the tires on the ground, you're dependent on the friction coefficient. So if there's an oil patch or a wet patch on the ground, you might actually slide out of the corner. You have more tire wear because you're pushing the tires to the ground. Your ride height will vary because you're pushed down, which means the faster you go, the closer you get to the ground. And the closer you get to the ground, the more effect that has on the aerodynamics. So your handling will be different and so on. So it's more difficult to steer the car. So using the air to push the car directly left and right has a number of benefits. But using internal and external air channels kind of confiscates a lot of space inside the car. And that's also the reason why in the end, the project actually stopped. But nevertheless, at that point in time, I teamed up with a company here in Antwerp, in Belgium, and we patented the concept. I also worked at that company for 6 years, doing aerodynamic simulations and internal testing. We patented the concept, and then the cool thing is that Ferrari referenced to our patent in their patent because they're also working on these kind of things, and Toyota did as well, and Faraday Future, which is or was one of the startups. I don't know where they are at the moment, also working on aerodynamics. And then we got to talk to Ferrari. I got to visit Pagani in Italy, which was really, really
That's
nice.
really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really rewarding because it was just a hobby project at the time. So going to Italy, I was there for holiday, but then I asked them if I could drop by, and that was fine for them. That was really nice to see their offices and see the cars. But like I said, in the end, the project stopped because those channels were taking up too much space for the packaging on the inside of the car. But nevertheless, because of this, I actually started working at that company with which I took the patent on the concept car and worked on all kinds of projects for other customers, which could be solar panels or drones. We did NASCAR. There's Formula E at the moment at that company. All kinds of things that have to do with aerodynamics. We also did physical wind tunnel testing on some occasions. And after a while, this became quite repetitive because we had software that allowed you to do thermal simulations, aerodynamic simulations, radiation, and so on. But in terms of aerodynamics, the concept is quite the same. You take the 3D model. First, you have to fix it because you cannot have gaps or holes in the model because that will make the simulation crash if it's not closed. Just like when you want to 3D print something, the model needs to be closed. Otherwise, the software doesn't know which is in and out and so on. The same goes for most aerodynamics packages. Then you have to build like a box around it, which is a virtual wind tunnel. Just in software, you do exactly the same as in real life. You build a box around it, and you make sure the box is big enough, long enough, and so on, so that you don't influence the flow around the object. Then you have to set up the mesh, and the mesh is like the 3D spatial division of the air, let's say, in small cubes. And the closer you get to your object, or the closer you get to a special flow structure, the more cubes you need, just like pixels on a photograph, to get it right or to get it accurate. And setting this up was a repetitive process. You had to iterate, do a first initial mesh, check the results, iterate again. And once it's done, you had to process the results, make images, put them in a PowerPoint, the typical output of any consultancy agency, and then present the results. And basically, that's the point where it only becomes interesting for the customer, because in my view, the customer wants to know two things. One is the analysis. What's the aerodynamics like? Is it good? Is it bad? How much performance or safety or efficiency do I have? And the second part is, how can I improve it? So analysis and improvement. So whatever you do upfront doesn't matter too much to the customer, how you get to those images, how you get to those numbers. So if you can automate that process, we're not replacing consultants, we're actually automating the upstream process so that they can focus on the most added value, which is their interpretation, their vision on how to improve things. And that's how Airshaper was born, to automate it, to make the role of the consultant more valuable, and to allow people with limited resources or means to actually start doing aerodynamics. And one of the key things was that obviously it's in the cloud, so people don't have to install software or buy software or buy hardware. It can work directly with such 3D models that are not closed. So our software is actually very flexible to handle those. And you don't have to input any technical parameter when you set up a simulation, which means it's just speed, the orientation, that's it. You select 1 out of 3 predefined accuracy levels, and all the rest is done automatically. And the next thing you have to do is to analyze the flow results in your browser. And that's basically it.
So
Yeah,
it's a
go
quick
ahead.
tool for design engineers to check what they're doing,
Yes,
rather
yes,
than
it's
a more complete picture of the flow. It's more of a more of a design guide.
well, the cool thing is that it's actually really accurate. So even though it's very automated and intuitive and user friendly, it's actually quite accurate. We do have
Okay.
a lot of code that will automatically refine this calculation mesh during the simulation to adapt to the different types of geometries that come in. We run it on high performance computers. At the moment, we use Google Cloud, which means that we have a lot of resources to really put a lot of computational power behind it. So this allows us to still provide highly accurate results, but at a very user-friendly experience level. So for the engineers, it's really nice to speed up their conceptual design phase. They can just shoot 10 concepts to Airshaper, and they will have the results next day. And they don't have to rent or occupy 10 servers at their own office, which they sometimes don't have. And they don't have to close all the models. If you're designing a car, for example, it can literally take more than a month to close all the gaps in a 3D model. So if you can just fire it at Airshaper and then get the results back, it's a fantastic precursor to doing that very, very detailed simulation in-house later on. And for designers, it's a very flexible tool, which goes beyond initial 2D simulations or data to design your product. You get a real 3D flow around your helmet, your motorbike, your solar panel, and so on.
Gotcha. So I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and you listed traveling to South America for 4 months in your work experience.
Yes.
I know, it's really cool. What do you do there? And when was this in your, what point of life are you there?
Well, that's actually in between the two things I mentioned. So the first block was designing gearboxes for wind turbines. Then I had already started designing the car as a hobby, but I quit my job. And together with my girlfriend back then, we both quit our job and decided to go traveling for 3 or 4 months. And then we came back and we just both needed a job. And that's when I contacted this agency I had spoken to before and asked them, can I just work here? And they said, yeah, that's fine. And 2 weeks later, I had a job in aerodynamics. So
that's
it's
really
a bit
cool.
of a lucky shot.
So before you were coming up with your concept car, Aquilo, is it the name? Okay,
that's the name.
So when you were coming up with this design, you were working full time, and how did you make time to work on your side hustle?
Yeah, good question. I guess that's a very typical challenge for anyone trying to make a professional living out of what they before that point do as a hobby. So in my case, well, the sports car, that was a hobby. I spent like 1 or 2 hours every night for a few years actually. First to design the concept, then to get the hang of the 3D software I needed, then to optimize it and so on. And then after doing this automation and then starting with Airshaper, in my free time, I built a prototype together with help of some friends and some colleagues. I enlisted the idea at a startup incubator here in Belgium. And they also helped to find people to guide me on what could be the real benefit of the product and so on. Because initially I wanted to be a coach builder, to design custom cars and improve the aerodynamics. And then they said, well, it's kind of a tough market, but maybe that aerodynamics bit could be the core of your business. And that's how I landed on the idea of a virtual wind tunnel. And then I made the prototype, so a very, very coarse prototype. So you could upload something to a website. It would be queued on one single machine that was somewhere in the cloud, and then it would give you back some 2D images, slices of the velocity and the pressure pattern. That's it. But to take it to the next level, I needed more time, more resources. I was actually stuck combining a full-time job with this prototyping. And so the solution for me was to apply for government funding. So there's all kind of schemes in Belgium that you can apply for, but it takes quite a lot of time and effort. You have to write a complete file, complete financial plan that also has to be sent to auditors and so on. And the government, in this scheme at least, they said, yes, we can provide funding, but the scheme requires you to also provide additional funding to make the whole thing work. Not just the innovation that the government will partially fund, but also the whole financial plan needs to make sense. I need to prove that you will have the funding, which meant I had to go look for, well, my own savings, but on top of that, private funding, which meant that in the end, my former employer actually got on board, which was really nice. I think
Okay.
most would have said, "Are you doing something that can compete with us? Stop doing what you're
Yeah.
doing." And my boss actually said, "That's interesting. Well, yeah, I want to join." So that's really nice. And then there was another incubator here in Belgium that also did coaching, but also provided funding. And then there was a private investor that I talked to. I just Googled SaaS business angel or something and found a number of people, and I contacted him. And in the end, he also got on board because they all said, "We're on board if you get the government funding." And the government said, "We're on board if you get the private funding." And so they came together, and in the end, they said, "Yes, go ahead." And then we hired people in 2017, started the development, but then full-on development with a number of people at the same time. And then we launched the product in mid 2018.
Really interesting. So before you dived into your startup, leaving your full-time job, did you do any kind of market research for what does my revenue look like after I started this platform? Because I think what you're doing is something really unique. And I can think of like one similar product, like Ansys Discovery is kind of does similar stuff.
Yes.
But other than that, I haven't found anything.
Yeah, well, I guess, of course, I made many mistakes, thinking that I knew what the market wanted, thinking that I knew what pricing would be, and so on. And in the end, everything changed. Pricing levels changed, subscription model versus one-off pricing. Market size was wrongly estimated by me, and so on. So many things that I could have improved upon. But at some point, you just have to go for it. When you have enough confidence that this is something that could work, I guess you just have to jump and then refine your strategies or revise your assumptions along the way. And indeed, then you see other products pop up. There's SimScale, which is a very nice online simulation platform, but it's oriented at engineers. It still asks you for technical input parameters. There's Ansys Discovery Live, which is a fantastic product, but a completely different setup in terms of hardware and software. It runs on GPUs, so you need a proper machine with GPUs in-house. Accuracy is nice, but not at the same level of Airshaper because it's a near live estimation based on completely different algorithms. So it's very nice, it's complementary, but it serves a different purpose. It's the real-time feedback at a lower accuracy. We do very fast feedback at a higher accuracy. And then there's the very custom projects and softwares that they use in automotive. They have the highest possible accuracy with all the technical settings that you need to enter. So indeed, you need to find your way within this market, which is totally not static. It's evolving. Tomorrow we can have another competitor pop up, and they will need to do something. But we just go as well. We see as we go.
I think it worked out well for you.
Yeah, thank you.
So what are the next steps from where you are right now?
Well, one thing is that we keep improving the code. I guess that's an ongoing thing for nearly every product that you have out there, whether it's a car or software or anything else. You need to improve what you have to stay up to date. And then you have new developments. I cannot disclose all of them, but one of the cool things that we did is that we have an API which allows our software to communicate to other software packages, and we have linked this to a machine learning platform. And then we apply this to Drone. So this other company that has the machine learning platform, which is Neural Concept, they can actually explore 3D shapes, but they don't have the aerodynamics core to calculate and validate every shape. So what they do is, for every shape that their software invents, let's say, they send the 3D model automatically to Airshaper. They get the results back. Their machine learning platform starts learning, starts seeing new trends and new optimized shapes, sends the new shapes to Airshaper, and again learns and refines its algorithms. And then, after enough learning, it can predict shapes of its own. And that really worked. In the end, it not only improved efficiency, which is in that segment at least defined as the lift divided by the drag. So you want as much lift for as little drag as possible for airplanes and drones and so on. Not only did it improve that value, it also started inventing shapes that we saw on real airplanes, like a twist in the angle of attack of a wing, for example, or a different dihedral or anhedral setup, which is the upward or downward angle of the wings and so on. So it started actually generating these things on its own, which was really interesting to see. So that's kind of the area where we're headed, to optimize these things.
That gives you the assurance that your model is working. So when you stumble upon something that's already out there.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, that was really nice to see.
So going back a little bit, you worked as a mechanic before, after you graduated with your master's?
I did mechanical engineering, and indeed I worked a few years as a design engineer, let's say, where I used to design cast iron pieces for gearboxes. So the gearboxes that go up into a wind turbine, it looks small from below, but they actually go up to 60, 70, 80 tons just for the gearbox alone. So they're huge pieces with lots of components and machinery to put them all together. So that was an interesting time to work for that.
Okay. No, I saw it on your LinkedIn profile that you worked as an automotive mechanic for a while.
Oh yeah, that's another story. That's a funny one, actually.
Yeah, that's why I was asking. I was trying to get you out of it.
Yes. So what I did, because I really like cars, and after that we actually, my brother and my dad and we bought an old Volkswagen Beetle, a really cheap old one to drive around, because we really like cars. And I wanted to learn more about it. I had done a car mechanic education in evening school, which took me 3 years or something, like every week or twice a week to go to a school and study. But I didn't have much hands-on experience. So what I did is I contacted, I think, one or a few garages, old-timer garages, and asked them, can I just work for you? Actually, I'm willing to do it for free because I just like it and I just want to learn a bit. And at the time I thought, and if I get good at it, maybe I can work there for 1 day a week and actually earn something and replace 1 day at my daytime job. But in the end, they actually fired me. Even though I didn't cost anything, they said, well, it's actually costing us more than what it's giving us. Which was kind of a confronting moment in my professional career.
I worked there for.
Well, I guess I was way too slow to get the hang of things. So I really liked it. I got to disassemble old engines. They had Jaguar E-types in the garage and on old British cars. They only did British cars, which is really nice. But they had to train me, just like any job. You don't really pay off the first so many months or sometimes even a year, which is normal, but I guess in my case I was extra slow to pick up things, I guess. So they said, yeah, well, it's best that we end this here because we have to have a profitable business to run, which is a pity, but actually I learned a lot from it, so no regrets. That was really nice.
That's good. Yeah. So thinking about your car name is Akio, and Akio or Aquila?
Aquilo, yes. I think it's not too original. The concept is named after a certain god of wind, so because it's aerodynamics inspired.
And how did you come up with the name Airshaper, which is quite catchy?
Oh yeah, well, that's actually a few years back when we started the whole journey. The goal had always been, also within our government funding files and so on, to move towards this automatic optimization of shapes. And that's why we called it Airshaper, because you actually want to shape what's happening because of the air, through the air, and so on.
So looking back at your journey, would you have done anything differently?
Well, if I had known what I know now, then definitely yes. There's so many things that we tried that didn't work. We redid it again, like software developments, market approaches, and so on. So yes, we would have done it completely different. But then again, with this knowledge, starting today, the market has changed. So it wouldn't be relevant. So we would again have to go via trial and error. But definitely there's a number of things I would have done differently. I think especially the sales and marketing part. I think I stepped into the trap most or a lot of technical founders step into, and that's to focus too much on the technical side. And then once the product is ready, okay, let's sell it. Which is nice because it's sequential, you can focus, but it's not what reality is about. The sales process and the marketing and the branding especially, it takes time. You cannot, it's really hard to accelerate sales because it's a very trust-based thing. Because even though it's all online and it's in the cloud, I wrongfully had the assumption that it's a product, people look at it, they say yes or no, they buy it. In reality, it's still very much a people business where they just want to talk to someone of Airshaper before they decide, or after a simulation, they want some feedback, which is all really nice to get to know the customer. But this also means that you don't have this huge automatic inflow of people massively doing simulations. That's not what happened. That doesn't happen when you launch a tool. People need to hear the name 5 times maybe. They need to see it 2 years in a row to know that it will stay, that it's a given brand and so on. So building all this up really takes time. So if I would do anything again or this again, I would actually start from day one to build a network, to ask people what they want, and to get the name out there, to start doing papers, videos, and so on.
Right. Especially it's not so white and black in this field. It's not like you see it and you buy it, right? There is some kind of research that has to go into it.
Yeah. And also, these are typically people that are making their first journey into aerodynamics as a whole. They're not just looking to go for Airshaper or a competitor of Airshaper. They're also looking at whether they actually want to get into aerodynamics or not. So it's an extra step of complexity, but it's also an extra step of reward that we can provide. When they get into it, when they do get into it, they actually get a very intuitive experience.
So how did you pull in your first customers?
That's also an interesting process. There's kind of different blocks. Like the first block was just network. I quit my previous job, started something new. People noticed this, and some of the old customers asked, of course, with the approval of my former employer, can we do something with Airshaper? It's a very small amounts of revenue, but that actually got us started, got us our first names on the website and so on. Then we did a lot of active prospecting, let's say, where we would go on LinkedIn and actually Google aerodynamics engineer cycling or something, and just start contacting people. Very widespread, very inefficient, but very good to learn where the people are that could actually be a customer. Took a lot of time, but we learned a lot. And then we did the same, but in the physical world. We went to fairs, like a bus fair, an aviation fair, automotive fairs, and so on. Started talking to people, just a whole day long, 2 or 3 days in a row, talking to people until your voice was gone, collecting business cards, and then following up afterwards. And the challenging thing is that's called like cold calling, or cold sales. You approach people that are, first of all, not necessarily looking for aerodynamics. So that's 90% of the people gone. And out of the 10% that remains, that's the people that do need aerodynamics. They might need it at a certain point in time, but not now. Typically, these are customers that run one project every 6 months or every 18 months, which means that the chances that you're talking to that person exactly on the time when they need aerodynamics are very low. Which means you put them in your system, you follow up, you call, and you call 3 months later, and you call 6 months later, and so on. And it's very intense. And again, you learn a lot, but it's not really scalable. And then we actually moved more and more towards reversing the process to create content so that people would see that we're a company doing nothing but aerodynamics all day long, putting content out there, showing people that you can apply it to sports goods, that you can apply it to trains, to cars, to bicycles, to athletes, and so on. And the more content we started putting out there, the more the more questions we got without us actually finding the people. The people started to find us, which is now our main business model. People find us, they contact us, or they order something directly, or they just ask us questions. And if it's a bigger project, they move to a subscription plan where they go for a repeat use of Airshaper.
So what does your customer base look like? Is this more of companies or independent inventors?
It's a bit of a mix, which is both a luxury and a problem, because it's a problem because we cannot really do very targeted marketing. If all our customers would be companies of 10 to 20 people in a certain area, in a certain segment, then yes, very easy, poof, all your marketing efforts on that specific niche. In our case, we have companies that have thousands of people on the payroll, like Decathlon, for example, which is a sports goods company. And we have individuals that order something, or even hobbyists that want to validate their remote control airplane or something else.
Just
So
like you.
yeah, exactly the same. I was the perfect prototype user, let's say. And so we have a huge spread of user type, and we have a huge spread of customer segment, industry segments, because it's drones, cars, planes, athletes, and so on. So that's both an opportunity and a challenge for us.
That's really great, Wouter. It's really a pleasure talking to you. I think I learned a lot about you
Likewise.
and your company.
Yeah, and thanks you too, Teja. I like the fact that you're starting this YouTube channel, talking to startups. Are you planning to go ahead with? Of course, your YouTube channel is a startup. Are there other dreams that you're working on?
I don't know. For now, you could say I have a little passion in journalism. So
Okay,
I
fantastic.
reach out to. I like knowing stories of people that start from the scratch and become successful. So it also inspires me a lot. So I just want to share it with others. That's how where I'm right now.
Okay, that sounds really nice. I look forward to seeing more videos on your channel then.